Hello everyone, this is Shama with Girls and Geese. We're back for yet another Ask the Black Belt session. Today we have a really awesome guest on, Jen Hall of 50/50 BJJ out in Virginia. She'll be joining us. She's been around the jiu-jitsu scene for a long time. She's one of those people who's like a bionic woman of jiu-jitsu who's had so many surgeries and has overcome so many different challenges over the years. So we're really excited to have her on today. And yay! Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No, I'm so happy we were able to put this together and have you on today. So I was gonna kind of give a little rundown. I know you from back in the day when you're competing all the time, and it was like, oh, Jen's back. Oh, Jen needs another surgery. Oh,
Yeah.
Jen's back. Oh, I can't. I empathize with you. I've had that happen to me a couple times, but it seems like you've kind of been pulled back and then made a victorious return many, many times. So I envy you for that because it takes a lot of resilience.
It's not easy.
No, not at all. So tell for everybody who's tuning in today. Go ahead and give just kind of a little rundown. Who is Jen Hall?
That's a good question. My husband Ryan Hall's in the UFC. I don't know if anyone, yeah, how well people know that. So I met him doing jiu-jitsu. Actually, I was competing back in 2006, and that was kind of the very beginning of my I think it was my first advanced competition. And then I kind of started as I kind of started getting more involved with him. I was working full time at the time, and then kind of eventually, once he opened the gym, eventually quit my job and started training full time and working at the gym full time with him in 2010. So since 2010, I've been a full time jiu-jitsu academy manager, I guess. I don't know, everythinger. Yeah, I've had a lot of injuries. Like you said, I think it's up to nine.
Wow.
Nine surgeries. I've had them all, most of them anyway, all the big ones. Two ACL surgeries and two hip surgeries and four shoulder surgeries. So yeah, I've done it all. And then a minor meniscus surgery. And then also a baby. So I have a 2-year-old. So I've been on and off the mats a lot over the last 15 years.
You've probably had every known thing that typically takes a woman out for a period of time. I think you beat me there. I think I never did the baby one, so you beat me there.
I'll tell you what. Well, I had a concussion that had me off the mats probably the longest. That was, I think, over a year and a half. I wasn't allowed to raise my heart rate at all. And then it was 2 years before I could train. So that was the longest. But that and the baby were the hardest. I had 2 ACL surgeries, not as hard as having a baby and coming back, and not as hard as a bad concussion like that.
What was the hardest part of having a baby?
I was literally just working out with my trainer earlier today, and we're still, now, of course, I messed up the baby rehab by having ACL torn 7 months postpartum, which didn't help my recovery. But my abs, like every time I think like, okay, I'm getting back to moving normal again, or they're getting stronger again, like he keeps like pinpointing like, nope, you're still not there yet. And he's finding things he can't do. So I'd say like the deep core and the lower abs, I had no idea. Because I had a six-pack when I was 16. Like I was an athlete. I was like, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. Everybody complains about their abs and whatnot. I'm like, oh, that's no problem. I have no major complications from the baby. And still, it has been a lot of work to get them back function. They're still not completely 100% yet, as my trainer pointed out to me today. But he actually was interesting because he thinks that insurance should cover that. It's so hard for most women, and he says most women don't realize. He thinks insurance should cover it because it causes a lot of long-term problems later on. Like he was talking about a lot of low back issues, a lot of like stenosis, and a lot of long-term issues that can come from never getting your abs all the way back to 100%.
What is it like? I mean, you wear many hats. as a mom, as an academy owner. I know you just recently came back into the competition scene again, you know, having a husband that is in the UFC, which is like an elite, you know, athlete. How do you wear and manage all of these hats and have any time to yourself?
Time to yourself? Is that a thing?
Is that
Oh my
possible?
gosh. I was visiting my friend Sophia Amarante, super, super awesome black belt, to get ready for this competition. And I had a day where she was working at the gym, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything to do. I'm going to go get my nails done and get a massage all by myself. It was like amazing.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, you know, you have all the hats. You're pulled in a lot of directions. I have a lot of really awesome, like our gym. We have a lot of really great guys that work for us that really help out with a lot of the day-to-day management at this point. Like I was still doing most of it and teaching 7 classes a week before I had Sean. But I had to go on bed rest with him, so I like couldn't do anything. They told me sitting was too strenuous for the last couple of months of my pregnancy. So I went from literally kickboxing and jiu-jitsu every single day to I can't sit for too long. And I had to just turn, at that point, I was like, I have to trust that people are going to do it. I had to turn things over. You know, I had a bigger responsibility. And then he was in the NICU and he had a lot of issues coming out after the birth. He was born early. And so I just had to like let it go. And it was really hard after having been in charge of everything. But the end result of that is, you know, I was able to do that. And now I can uh, somewhat focus more on Sean still. And I can give him a lot of attention even 2 years in. I don't have, he's in daycare part-time, but I don't have to put him in full-time because my schedule's flexible. I bring him to the gym. Like he thinks the gym is like this big playground, and everybody looks out for him, and that's awesome. That helps so much. And just everybody working for me that stepped up to kind of do extra once I got pulled away. And then also getting ready to come back and compete for the first time in 6 years. This past tournament was I mean, everyone really helped out so much. Like this training partners willing to do anything. Ryan, who's usually in fight camp, and I'm the one doing everything. Like he actually started his fight camp for PJ Penn the day I went into labor. Like the first person arrived that day, and so we have a house guest, and I'm in labor in the hospital, and he's on the mat training. You know, when I go into labor, but you know, and then this time he, you know, I've done that for him, and then he's the one who suggested, hey, why don't you go to Florida, train with Sophia? I went for a couple days. I came back. My son was still alive. And, and so then
that is a good thing.
yeah. And so then, well, Ryan had never done overnight before, so it was a big test. And then I went for 5 days with a couple more days right before the tournament, and then the days of the tournament. So it was 5 days gone, and so that was just super helpful, like to have him kind of take that over, so I could focus, you know, on myself a little bit for a couple days. Realistically, I haven't figured out how I'm going to do that more long term yet, to be completely honest, because 5 weeks and a couple days here and there is a little easier to budget. A long term is going to require a big schedule and I think lifestyle adjustment from what I've been doing to get back into it. So we haven't figured that out quite yet, but you know, hopefully.
Yeah, baby steps, but you're getting there.
Life changes, you know. Things happen. When I started dating Ryan, I was 23 and I had a full-time job. And then a couple of years later, I'm a couple of years older, but now I don't have a full-time job and I'm working at the gym part-time. And then eventually, you know, you buy a house, you have kids, and you're just like everybody else. Everybody's just trying to figure out what your goals are at a given moment and to realign yourself as necessary. And that's kind of what happens when you have an injury. You realign, rehabbing, get back, and then back in again. Same thing with a kid.
No, no. And you definitely are somebody who can evolve and be flexible for sure. You've learned that lesson quite so many times.
You know, yeah, there's nothing quite like the hard way to do it, you know.
Oh, I'm the same way.
You know, a couple of things. I think jiu-jitsu really helped me with the baby. That's really interesting because I wanted to go without meds. So I gave a natural birth, but then when I got there, my labor was progressing too fast. So they made me do a natural birth without getting out of bed because they were trying to hold him in longer. Like they'd give me a shot for steroids for his lungs, and that needed 7 hours to work. My labor was going too fast. They're like, oh, by the way, unlike everyone else, we're slowing you down. And I was like, oh, without meds, that's awesome. But it worked out, and I had a super low heart rate. The doctor was like super surprised. My heart was like 70 beats per minute at the end of labor. But that took a lot of control. Like you kind of learn that in competition. Like you go out there and you have to zoom out of everything, you know, and you just got to focus on what's in front of you. And it was kind of like that, you know, you just had to like block everybody else out, focus on what you needed to do, and allow me to be able to do that even when things weren't going the way that I had expected. So that was a really interesting. And then, you know, same thing, I think, coming back, a lot of people, I hear a lot of women talk about, oh, I feel like I'm not a real person. You have this baby, and especially when you have a baby that needs a little extra care right after birth. And you're like, what do I do? And you know, one thing I learned from all my injuries, no matter what, every day you take a shower. And if you don't do anything else productive for the whole rest of the day, you feel like a human being because you took a shower.
Hey, it's the small things.
Yes, exactly. I don't know how to scroll through people's questions. How do I do that? Here, do they have any?
Here. So, how are you dealing with negative feedback from students and their families during COVID? It looks like the first question. So the hardest thing right now is with running the gym is not everyone is happy with the decisions we make during COVID wise. So what would you answer with that one? Sorry, I'm reading it over your face.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's what I was trying to figure out. I was like, how do I do this? So we haven't really had very many complaints. I mean, we had our first one tonight. So we've been back 7 months and we haven't had any complaints. I think that's just, you know, recognizing that you got to do the best that you can and being really communicative with your students. So from the very beginning, we were extremely communicative with our students. This is what we're planning to do. These are the level of mitigations that we're going to take based off whatever information is coming out at each moment. And every time I'm in Virginia, and every time we went through a different phase, we adjusted slightly based off of whatever the current regulations are. And I know that in some places, some academies are doing whatever they feel they need to do to continue functioning. We have also been, but we are really trying hard to abide by all the local and state regulations. We're in a really small community. We're in a really small city. And we're doing the best that we can to follow the laws and still maintain our business model. And so what we did, which is I think a little different than some places, is I know some people just kept charging students whatever they were doing. Some people said, okay, we're just going to freeze everybody, but this has been a lot longer. And so I think the method that we took was we told our students that they could freeze or cancel if they wanted at the very beginning. No, we didn't charge anyone. And right away, right off the bat. And then anyone that continued paying, we would credit their account for the duration of the quarantine. Now, for us in Virginia, that meant starting about July was when we were able to kind of open and fitness and gyms and stuff, centers could open with a little bit more. We could kind of somewhat be back to normal. Like we have like one person training with one person, and you know, we have a lot of rules. Like you have to be 10 feet away. We have squares. We have masks. We have all these other things you have to wear in the building. But we've been really trying to abide by all the rules, and we allowed everybody to freeze and cancel, and then we gave a credit for anyone who kept paying us for the first 3 months. So what was that, like April, May, June? Everyone that was paying gets a credit, an academy credit, and that's we're applying towards private lessons, membership dues, gear in the pro shop, and whatever else. So we're really lucky. We have a really supportive group of people. We had a lot of people that kind of came with us then, and then in July, August, and they're like, okay, it looks like some people still aren't comfortable coming in. They maybe froze or canceled at that point, or maybe they did sooner, whenever it worked for, you know, anyone. So we tried to be as flexible as possible, and that's all, you know, that's all you can do. And then I think if you're abiding by the rules, I don't really know what people can complain about as long as you are. And if you're not, then I think that's recognizing that the rules are not the same in every state. Like some of them are a little bit more flexible than others. You know, I don't know, you got to do what you got to do to run your business and to feed your family and to pay your bills, just like everybody else. You know, it's not an easy time. I think do what you believe to be right. And one thing that we've never done in our academy is worry about one or two people. If they don't like what you're doing, if they want to complain about it, hear them out. If it seems reasonable to you, then great, you know. And if we have people that made suggestions that seem reasonable, great. But if it comes down to it, no academy is perfect for every person, and no one person is worth compromising on your values or principles as a human being. So that's kind of how we operate. It works for us. It doesn't keep us conflict free. It doesn't keep us complaint free. But as long as you're doing what you know to be the right thing, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, 100%. So you have someone asking about competition. Any tips you can offer? They say they're having some difficulty staying focused on the person that they're going against and their coach. So do you have any tips to help them focus and hone in on what they need to focus on?
I think that's actually hard to do. I think it's hard for some people. Like my husband is like laser like focused. Even tonight, we were out eating, and my son's like jibber jabbering, like, "Can I have rice? Can I have rice?" My husband's in the middle of a conversation with other people there, and he just doesn't hear him. Like it's like he's just not going to stop. He's just focused on what he's thinking, what he's doing at the moment. And I'm like, hey, trying to pass food over like across him to the baby, you know, and he's just like doesn't even see me. Like it's not like he's doing it on purpose. It's like it just doesn't get into his brain. For me, and I think more women, and maybe that comes with being more of a multitasking oriented. I think for women, it might be a little more difficult for a lot of us to be laser focused. And so it's just kind of something you have to work at. I think trying to keep your mind clear of distractions. I think anxieties, nerves, other things can kind of get in the way. For me, I just try to think about being connected to the other person, just trying to be in the moment, not worrying about anything else. If I don't hear my coach, whatever. If I do hear my coach, great. Generally, I think I'm able to do that pretty well. Maybe it comes from years of playing sports too as a kid where like the right stuff filters in usually. But yeah, everyone has moments of focus, you know, that they're hyper in, I think, and that they lose focus for a minute. And hopefully you can kind of just work at, you just kind of have to work at it with experience. I think the more you compete, the better you get at that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think, Shema? I used to compete a ton.
It's the same thing. I think it is. Like, I remember, like, towards the end when I was doing it, like, every weekend, you know, you start learning how to kind of hone in on that adrenaline dump. And you're like, okay, not yet. Not yet. No, hold on. Not yet. Okay, now go. You can go, you know. But that took a really long time to get to that point where, because sometimes I think the most common thing that happened to me is I would have the adrenaline dump standing on the sidelines of the match before the match even started because I was so anxious about going. So yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think anxiety does a lot to pull us out of the focus. I think if you can control your anxiety, and get to the bottom of the root of your anxiety and face it head on, I think that's maybe the best way to deal with some of the focus issues, because you're getting pulled out of your head for some, you're getting pulled out of the moment by something. And for me, I think similar. It's usually somewhat related to something else going on, or anxiety, I think, is a really common one.
So I'll go ahead and close out with this last question. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten? Like top, doesn't have to be number one. I know it's hard, but like maybe one of the top 10 pieces of advice that you've gotten that really stuck with you.
Gosh,
I know it's a hard one.
like in terms of still doing jujitsu, continuing, or in terms of competition performance?
Anyone you want to pick. Just something that stuck with you. One of the many top, right up there at the top.
Well, I think one of the turning points for me in my competitions, consistency at the beginning of brown belt. Because before that, I won some things. I'd won a couple big thing. I had pins at blue belt and a couple other things. But like I was up and down a lot. And I think at brown belt, I had more of a, whether or not of, um, in terms of wins and losses, but just in my performance. Like sometimes you win and you're like, oh man, that was like, I'm lucky I got that one. And other times you lose and you're like, wow, that was like an awesome performance, but I didn't get the win. And so I had a really up and down in terms of the consistency of my performance, absent, the actual results. And then at brown belt, I had, regardless of results, I had a much more consistent performance. And one of the things happened was actually like one of our friends at black belt just happened to send me a message of like, good luck, and he said something to the effect of like, good luck, world champion, like it was like this, like he was acting like it was a given that I was going to be successful. And he'd helped me right before one of the big tournaments. And I was like, wow, if he thinks that highly of me, maybe I can do this. And it was just like a turning point in terms of, I think, belief in myself. And I think belief in yourself is so important. And I know I'll never forget like Hannette Stack talking about this, one of the first times I met her, just believe. And her coach always saying, that to her, you have to believe. And it all comes down to that. I think you have to believe. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe when you're putting in the work, and then you have to believe when you're getting on the mat. And if you don't believe in yourself, you can't be successful, right? You can't be consistently successful. You have to believe, truly believe that you belong where you are, and that you have the capacity to succeed. Because without that, you'll always be up and down.
Oh, it's such a pleasure talking with you. I'm so glad we got you on here today, and we got a window into your world and perspective, because you do have a wealth of knowledge, not only for what I've witnessed in your jiu-jitsu journey, but just in who you are as a person. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Emma.
No, not a problem. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. It was a pleasure having you. We hope you guys can join us for our next one. Stay tuned for Girls and Geese stuff at girlsandgeese.com. All right, take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.